Welcome back, guys. I trust you've been staying safe. Now, one of the biggest TikTokers in Nigeria, known in real life as Murd3r, but known on TikTok as Enjoyment Don 75, has unfortunately been unalived by a group of guys. This is still an open case and investigations are ongoing. This case is as fresh as just about 4 days ago from the date of me publishing this video. Now, when the case first broke, there were several theories out there, and of course, I had to do my research. I went down to look at the genesis of who Murd3r or Enjoyment Don 75 is, and also to appreciate her come up in this TikTok whole thing, and possibly try to find out what could have led to this gruesome unaliving, because she was taken down by 8 GSWs, allegedly inflicted on her by these guys who are yet to be identified in her state in Nigeria called Warri. Now, so far so good. The theories have been narrowed down to 2 key ones, but none of them has been corroborated by the police as investigations are still ongoing. So the first theory is this. Rumors are circulating that these guys who did this to Enjoyment Don 75 or Murd3r actually knew her. The rumors are that they knew this lady and they did this because of a transaction that failed between them. Now, if you look at Murd3r or Enjoyment Don 75, she's a lady, but she seems more like a tomboy, you know. She's a lady, but she dresses like a guy. And it looks like some people were trying to link her to LGBTQ and all those stuff. I couldn't corroborate anything on that, so I'm not going to dwell on that in this coverage. But then, back to the first theory. What is out there is that she had a transaction with these guys. An amount of money actually came into her possession, and she was supposed to hold on to this money and ensure that all parties who are entitled to a share of it actually get their share. But for some reason, when the money got to her, the transaction sort of truncated. So it became more like she was in possession of this money, but then the other guys who had a sort of claim to some chunk of it couldn't get theirs. So more like she had sat on their share of this money. This version, like I said, hasn't been corroborated yet. But if that is the case, then it could possibly make sense as to how come these guys allegedly would want to inflict this action on her. Because as it will turn out, this was actually on the day of the final of the African Cup of Nations between Nigeria and La Côte d'Ivoire, where of course Nigeria lost as well. So when the chaos was ongoing, when the attack on her by these guys was unraveling, it's alleged that some people thought that it wasn't any criminal thing happening because they heard the sounds of the GSWs, but they thought that it was just noise from fans excited about watching this final soccer game, and fans also being frustrated and heartbroken because Nigeria had lost. Bear in mind, this case is coming from Nigeria. So right there and then in real time, very few people were able to actually determine that this was actually a crime going on. And it happened at the premises of her own house. At this young age, she had allegedly built her own house and she was staying in this house. And she was even having a second house. And that is where you begin to draw a form of line between this theory and the possibility that there could be some truth in it, if any. Because the question is, I've seen her come up. As of 2016, there are some videos of her from 2016, and she was basically with her parents. So to transition in just 8 years to be able to own 2 houses. The question is, what was she doing? That is unclear. No one has been able to define anything that speaks of the business that Enjoyment Don 75 was engaged in, to the point she was living a seemingly lavish life per what we saw in her TikTok videos, going to the best of places, driving lavish cars and all. This could be a facade. This could be something that she was putting on as an act to drive her content creation. But if it turns out they were actually hers and these houses were hers, then it begins to beg the question, how did this young lady get this money so quick? Definitely it wasn't from TikTok payoffs, because in as much as TikTok might get you some money, it can't get you money to establish all these things. That is a fact. I'm also here in Africa, so I can speak to some of these things. And her account was that big, but it wasn't as big as she would be able to generate revenue to establish these things. So then obviously there could be some side dealings and side hustles from her, where she may then have been in a situation where she was collaborating with some of these people and an amount of money came up, and these disputes allegedly ensued between them, which eventually led to her being unalived with these 8 GSWs inflicted on her by these guys. So that is the first theory. And from that angle, it could hold. But of course, the fact that an analysis can pin it in that angle does not necessarily make it a fact, unless police are able to establish evidence that will corroborate that theory. So that is the first theory. Then the second theory has it that she was attacked by these guys and their goal was to abduct her. And when that failed, then they decided to just unalive her. Now, let's get into that theory, of course, because I have also done extensive research on the rate of abductions and kidnappings going on in Nigeria, especially from the last 3 years coming. And it's been very rampant, especially from 2023 coming into 2024. If you go through my playlist, you see a number of true crime cases relating to this phenomena that is currently plaguing Nigeria as a country in West Africa. So in that regard, I wouldn't be surprised that that could also be the root cause of how she got unalived. Because bear in mind, 1, she's on social media almost every time publishing new videos showing that she's enjoying herself, as her name implies, Enjoyment Don 75. So she shows herself and she's enjoying herself, flaunting wealth, seen in videos where some friends of hers are lavishing money on her, literally, or she is also throwing money on other people. Now, if there is a rogue or a criminal who is engaged in abductions and kidnappings watching on social media, definitely you are setting yourself up to look like a prospective target for them. Because most of the time in Nigeria, when they take someone's loved one, they will just demand a ransom. If you pay it, they will release the person in most cases. So on this fateful day, this second theory has it that these guys were sort of tracking her in her hood during the time the match was being played, and it was almost getting to the point where the match was wrapping up and Nigeria was losing. And when they felt that the time was right, they rolled up on her. Now, fortunately for her at that time, she was also very close to her house. So in the ensuing scuffle between herself and these guys, she was able to free herself briefly and then ran into her compound. Now, you've seen her, she's well built. So it's not difficult to believe that she can wrestle her way out of the hands of some guys, depending on the number who are actually trying to take her. Now, this theory has it that when she entered her compound, she quickly locked the main gate ran into the house, locked the door, but it seems that she was standing behind the door, probably trying to hold it back in case the people followed and tried to break down the door. And it was at this point that it's alleged that these people, when they realized they had failed, decided to open fire into the house. And by so doing, some went through the door and unfortunately had contact with Mary Mijabo, aka Enjoyment Don 75, and the rest is history. So when the few people who were around noticed what had happened to her, they rushed her to the police, but unfortunately, she succumbed to her injuries. And this is the sad end of this young, beautiful life. She was a die-hard fan of Davido, and she literally idolized him in this apartment or these buildings that is alleged to be hers. As it stands now, at the time of making this video, investigations are still ongoing. The police are yet to give any updates on any possible suspects they have or any arrests that have been made. I don't know how soon this case is going to be solved. Honestly, I don't know. That is not to say the police are not doing their best. I believe the police are doing their best, but sometimes they are just overwhelmed by the rates at which the crimes are happening and increasing. Her mom is still around. She has other family members around, and she came from a seemingly poor background. She seemed to have made it, and she's seen on social media sometimes paying tribute and homage to how she hustled with her mom and her family and how now she's able to make them comfortable. Now, to have such a person taken away from them, the question is, what is next for this family? What is next for a mother who has unfortunately been put in a situation where she has to now lay her daughter to rest instead of the other way around? And what is next? How do they get their closure when no suspects have been arrested? How do they get their closure when nobody has been convicted and sentenced? How do they get their closure when life seems to be moving on and they have lost this relative of theirs and they don't know even who to suspect as being responsible? This is one of the true crime cases that I'm sure would need a definite update because I'm following this case. As and when updates are due, I'm going to bring them to you. Now, my heart goes out to her relatives, and I also hope that she rests in peace. But hey, wherever you are watching this, just be careful what you do on social media, honestly, because social media is accessible to most people, if not all, and you don't know who is watching what you are putting out there on social media. I have a case where a gentleman in the UK ended up losing his life because of social media and a post that he put out of some wristwatches where people saw it and they targeted him, attacked him, but unfortunately in the end it turns out the watches were even fake. But he had already been unalived by these people. Be very careful what you put out there on social media because several people are watching. Don't think that it's only your followers who are watching. Some people come and watch you but do not follow you. And you don't know the background of these people. You don't know the intent of these people. In as much as social media has its positives, let's also be aware of its negatives as we continue to use it. Stay safe out there. I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Make time to watch some of our other videos. We will love your feedback on this and many more videos that we have in our playlist. I'll catch you on the next one.